Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Ademola Bookmen Podcast. I'm Al Bond and I'm here with my friend John Coughlin. Hi, Johnny.
Heyo, how you doing?
Yeah, we read footballers' autobiographies, and this week we're doing a real titan of a game. This week is My Turn, Arf, by Johan Cruyff.
So I'll start with the arch hipster thing. Oh, is that how you pronounce his name? Say it again.
Johan Cruyff.
Yeah, well, I think that's how everybody would say it in the English-speaking world. But I've been looking at videos on YouTube.
Have you indeed, Johnny?
It's Johan Cruyff.
Right. Okie dokie.
Gotcha.
Johan Cruyff, eh? This week we're doing My Turn by Johan Cruyff.
No, I think we can stick
that
with
is.
Cruyff.
Like, it's a Cruyff turn then, is it? I'm not saying Cruyff turn. Imagine what a fucking arsehole you'd look like down playing five-a-side. Nice Cruyff turn, excuse me? When people pronounce foreign names rightly, it's wrong in a way, isn't it? Like, should hear my wife when she orders Mexican. It drives me nuts. Tortilla. Excuse me? You mean it towards it? All right, we're losing base. All righty, so.
But just on that topic, Irish people, we really get up on our high horse about English pronunciations of Irish names. Kevin Moran would be one, but that's be Kevin Moran, Paul McGrath, whatever. But it happens all the time in football. Like Bruno Fernandes would be like Bruno Fernandes or something like that, right? But we obviously couldn't. And that's
kind of.
We couldn't care less. We couldn't care less about a Portuguese dude, but we don't like it when it happens to us. I guess that's just human nature.
I mean, I don't like it, full stop, and I think that probably makes me a smaller man. Like, when people do say Bruno Fernandes, it's like, oh, fuck off. But I know that it's right. So I'm wrong, and I'm a small little Brexit Britain boy. Like, I can't help it, like, as I say. Anyway, bloody hell. All right, so I didn't know very much about Johan Cruyff. I'm not calling him Cruyff all episode. He's going to be.
I also looked at a video of it's Vincent van Gogh. Can't even do it. Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? Like, he can stick it anyway. I don't like Van Gogh. I don't like him.
This is not the first time you've said that on this podcast. Your views of Vincent van Gogh.
I really feel very strongly about him. Like, all the world to know. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about how much I don't like Van Gogh. Oh, bloody Dorby oil.
Right, okay. You don't know
anything. Yeah, lovely stuff.
You don't know anything about Johan Cruyff.
No, I don't think I did, Johnny. I think I associated him slightly with the wrong time here. He's just one of those people. Obviously, I know the name. Obviously, I know the legends. But I didn't really know a lot about him. For example, he's older than I thought he was. I mean, I thought he was sort of young in the 70s, but he was actually a mature player by the time he hit the 70s, right? He'd been playing for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think I knew the broad strokes of Cruyff. But then have you watched any footage of him?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, I watched like a video of his best goals. I mean, obviously that's difficult because, a lot of his work was done in the 60s, and I can only imagine it wasn't really televised. And back in the 60s, Ajax were absolutely fuck all. That's something I learned, right? They were like a little pub team back in the day. I know they weren't a pub team, but little stadium, no professionals.
It's all amazing. And the thing about watching the Dutch or Ajax, obviously when you watch, if you watch Manchester United, say, in the 60s, which I would have done at some point, any of that stuff just looks old. But because of Cruyff and his influence in football beyond playing or in playing and then as a coach, and the rest of it, and the broader kind of philosophy of football, the football doesn't look old at all, even though the footage is ancient, They're stroking it around and they're moving, they're doing all the triangles. It's really quite something.
It is quite something. I mean, he is... The final chapters of the book are really his footballing philosophy, right? And it's wild, man. It's just Guardiola's City, right? It totally is. The exact formations, everything is what he sort of spelled out. I mean, and yeah, there you go. I mean, people talk about Bielsa, but Wow, baby. He really was a visionary, huh?
And did you know that? How much did you know about Guardiola as a player? Because Cruyff gives his all-time 11, and he puts Guardiola in there. Like, he also says that Guardiola was about to be like kicked out of Barcelona because it wasn't good enough, but he kept him along. He kept him on. But in his all-time 11, was Guardiola that good? I didn't know that.
Not in my memory. I just remember him being like a defensive midfielder, but not as good as, say, Sergio Busquets. That was my memory of him as a player. He's not someone I ever really spent a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah. But yeah, so in terms of what I knew about Cruyff, I knew that he was I knew that he was the kind of, he was at the kind of ground zero of the creation of this total football and the reinvention, or the reinvention of football, or the invention of modern football, if you want. I knew that, and I also knew that he is a total wanker.
Yeah, it does sound quite. He is hard, kind of hard work.
Oh no, I think famously hard work. I was reading other things about him, and he would drive the team bus because he didn't like what the bus driver was doing. He would get in fights with taxi drivers in totally different countries because they're not going the right way. He used to argue with surgeons, and he talks about this in the book. I really got into surgery. That's an interesting thing to just kind of get into, you know. He became fascinated.
It's a natural progression, Johnny. It goes, you know, I'm interested in a bit of football coaching, and let's have a look at this bloke having his skull cut open.
He would go along if a player was having an operation, but he'd just be there breathing down the neck of the surgeon. And he alludes in the book to falling out, to one of the many fallings out he had with different clubs. And one of the ones that he had at Barcelona was because he had an argument with a surgeon. And he says the surgeon said something like, "I'm the only person who's in control in this room." And Cruyff was obviously really offended about that. He's the surgeon.
I'm sure he'd have no objections if that same surgeon had bowled up and give him a hand with his team talk. No problem at all.
Mark Noble. I don't comment on doctors. Well, Johan Cruyff comments on doctors.
Yes, this is not like Mark Noble's book, is it, Johnny? It's not like Mark Noble's book at all.
My God, what like it's a million. And I think that was one of my very earliest kind of thoughts, is like, this is just a different planet to Noble. Like, it's like they're talking about two different, they live on different planets, they're playing different games, just no relation whatsoever to Mark Noble.
I mean, that's right. I mean, they've got 2 feet and 2 arms and 2 eyes and a nose, but they are different creatures, aren't they? Like the boy Cruyff, he's got a hinterland, doesn't he, mate? In fact, he's all hinterland. He's
some Dutch journalists years ago went through interviews with Cruyff and put together what he called Cruyffisms, like just his various quotes, you know. And this was a massive seller in the Netherlands. So he's got all of these one-liners. So he's kind of the Dutch Oscar Wilde or Winston Churchill or something like that. But one of the things that he says, one of his famous lines is, "You play football with your head." And, you know, that kind of explains how most top footballers have not gone on to be top managers. But he did both. And I guess it's because of what he says. This is a thinking man. Fucking hell. He's got some brain on him.
He's not unaware of his own intellect.
No.
And I think that must have got in his way sometime, Johnny. I mean, the point is, he went, you know, as a manager, well, as a player, he was magnificent, but he didn't achieve what he could have done. Perhaps, I think, through some of his hubris. And as a manager, he won the Champions League with Barca, but that was basically it. And that was 30 years ago. And I just wonder, could he have not been employed again? But was he just too spiky to employ by anybody?
Yeah, well, he was falling out with people all the time. And, you know, we'll talk about it as we go through the book, but like, this is a constant in his life, just falling out with people. Because he's just, if
you're a manager, you have to fall out with people all the time, right? I just think this
is different level stuff. I think, you know, he was falling out with everyone. Just like this book it's so funny, right? So again, I listened to the book. It's 9 hours long, and about 3 hours in, the football is finished. His career is over, and I was like, "What the hell are the next 6 hours of the book about?" And there's about an hour where he's talking about what people have done to his beloved Ajax. torn it to shreds, and he's just going on and on and on about this. It's just.
Oh, I mean, there are some of those chapters are just flick. Yeah, I feel for you, honestly, with the audio book, because I could sort of scan through and it could just be like, yeah, you've got to agree with me. Man, he repeats himself a lot.
Yeah.
But again, it's this single-mindedness that is obviously led to his success. But crikey, it doesn't necessarily make for a great read. I mean, exactly the same as you, Johnny. I mean, pretty much his playing career and his managerial career is pretty much done by halfway through the book, right? It really is. It's like, that's it. There's a scant description of it as well, John, isn't there? I mean, it's like, yeah, anyway, the World Cup final.
He won the Ballon d'Or 3 times. It's not mentioned in the book. That just couldn't be bothered to mention. You said in the last episode that Mark Noble talked more about that last West Ham game at Upton Park more than ever did about Champions League final. Johan Cruyff just didn't bother to mention the fact that he won the Ballon d'Or 3 times.
Whereas we get a whole chapter of fucking Mark Noble preparing for the last game at the Berlin ground. Yeah, it's so very different. I mean, genuinely, there are times where I went like that reading the book. Like, I mean, we'll get to it. There's a politician that crops up who I wasn't anticipating cropping up. Like, it was quite astonishing.
We talked about there's an inevitable Maradona, 10-hour dramatization of his life. But Cruyff's own kind of story, his background story is just astonishing as well. He grew up a stone's throw from, as you said, the humble Ajax. They were a small team, and his dad was the greengrocer who was selling them whatever they needed, and he was always around. And then his dad passed away when he was 12, and his mother, the club seemed to have employed him. I employed his mother as at this point, and she became the not the tea lady, but the cleaner, and she married the groundsman. So he was just always there. And the groundsman
who'd already taken interest in young Yordi. He was already Uncle Henk. He was already an Uncle Hank. Yeah. It seemed to me like she was having an affair with the groundskeeper, and then his dad killed himself.
He was coming for dinner.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, she does move. I mean, like, it's only, but so Uncle Henk was a part of his life before his father died, but upon his death, she does then go and marry the groundskeeper. But yeah, Ajax is in his blood.
Another person who was always hanging around Ajax as a young boy was Louis van Gaal. He used to come and watch them train. And Van Gaal got in the second team of Ajax, but he couldn't get into the first team because there was a certain Johan Cruyff in his way. And those two guys did not like each other, which is fun. And that's what you want.
I mean, honestly, exactly right. I mean, even before I read the book, though, someone just said, I was to guess, do you think Louis van Gaal and Johan Cruyff, fuck's sake, like each other? My guess would be, no, I bet they don't. No. And I would have been right. Yes. Correct. Who does Louis van Gaal like, apart from that saxophone player lady? I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
Well, the story in the book, getting ahead of ourselves big time, is that he arrived in Barcelona and Cruyff invited him over. And he came he said, our doors are always open. He came 3 nights in a row. And come on, Louis. Stand your well. Come here, man.
So he's very, very smart, Johan, but maybe not, because he likes numerology.
Unbelievable.
And
do you know how many chapters there are in this book, Al? Did you notice that?
14.
Correct. And what number did Johan Cruyff wear?
14.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, mate. He's playing 4D chess, lad. He's messing with my brain.
Yeah, he said, married his wife on the 2nd of December. 2 + 12 = 14, which is why our marriage was so happy. That is bonkers. You can do it.
There really is a subset of Stranger society who believes in all this nonsense.
But it's a constant in his life. He sets up this institution, this foundation that builds these pitches for underprivileged areas, and they build the courts, and the courts are 28 by 56 meters, which is like, all kind of multiples of 14. It's bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, at least there was something interesting in the chapters about him building them pitches, frankly, because, that was hard going. All right, some more quirky, fun things. Johan Cruyff thinks his dead father communicates with him through the medium of a watch. he stops and watch when he wants to know he's there. So, fair enough, Johan.
How would you pronounce the famous coach?
Vic Buckingham. I think that's how you do it. No, okay. I don't know. Rinus Michels. That's how Rinus Michels.
Rinus Michels is how the guy in the audiobook was funny because the guy would read it, kind of accentless, and then every now and again there'd just be a Dutch word or a Dutch name. Only Van Slot would just come into the middle of it. It's very funny,
It was by Steve McLaren was doing the audiobook.
Yeah. So Rinus Michels, the two of them kind of like a Lennon McCartney, I heard it described elsewhere, kind of created this total football together, which is essentially using space and all that we know about from Guardiola, just kind of that in its infancy before it had been kind of...
Well, you have talked about this, Johnny. You've talked about people talking about tactics and what they're doing against teams, but you could read this book and realistically go and coach a football team, couldn't you? I'm not saying to a high standard, but you would have a basis there to work with, right? If I could set up a team like he sets up a team.
Yeah. When people say, "Well, my mother could have managed, Celtic to the league or whatever," maybe if she'd read this book.
Yeah, that's it. But it is very clear. It's about space between the lines, exactly how he sets up the lines, the keeper's role in it. I mean, I learned something. I did.
I do find that interesting. And then at some point, I find I switch off.
Yeah, I switched off real quick, Johnny, to be honest. But there was real quick, flick, because it was quite a long book as well. I thought, bloody hell, I'm running out. Flick. Oh, more tactics.
The stuff about Ajax, so they were a nothing team. Rinus Michels joins. They kind of create this football, and then in 1965 they played against Liverpool, who were like the best team in the world, or the best team in Europe anyway. And they beat them like 4 or 5-0, and people didn't even know who they were, and they were like, Jesus Christ, who the hell are Ajax? Suddenly there was something,
Yeah, and Shankly acted like a bit of a bad loser as well. You never hear that side of Shankly, do you? But I suppose it was there.
What did he do?
Said something bad. Didn't write it down, but he had a little moan. I just thought that's...
Yeah.
I did my research, Johnny. I watched the Johan Cruyff doing kick-ups with a cigarette packet, and I watched his top 10 goals.
Yeah.
The top 3 were really good.
He
10 on the special.
Talked more about that ad for the cigarettes than he did about any of the Champions League finals or European Cup finals.
No, and it's really lame, isn't it? Like, I mean, just imagine watching that, like, fag on, like, oh, that makes me think. No. No, I'm going to give it up. Johan Cruyff is like doing keepy-ups with a cigarette packet. Yeah, well done. And he still died of lung cancer, so no point.
This book was written after he was diagnosed with it as well. So he knew when he was, like, this was 2015, he died in 2016. Which is what makes his attacks on the various people he knew over the years all the more remarkable, really.
Yep, yeah. This could be a chance to heal some pain. Nope.
But in the Ajax stuff, he's just like streets ahead of everyone, but he is a pain in the ass, never shuts up, and he annoys people. It's the Ajax team are all kind of like long hair. It's the 60s, man. Children of the 60s. They're rebelling against the baby boomers, or they are the baby boomers. They're rebelling against their parents, and they say, okay, we're going to have a democratic vote for captain. And Cruyff say, of course he can do that, because he was a captain. And he lost, so he left.
So he left, exactly. See you later. Oh, you don't like me, huh? Not really. Well, I'm going.
Out the gap and off to Barcelona.
What is the baby boomers pair? That's the golden generation, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Why can't I have a name like that? I should be like the platinum generation.
What are you? Generation
Gen X.
Gen X.
Still sexy sounding cool. Yeah, I fucking did, mate. Gen X, not a lot of you like millennial whiners, big pussies. I've seen the memes. I know what you're all like.
Well,
but like us, we have a blameless generation.
Did you have to get a younger person to download the memes for you?
Yes, my wife. Okay, so quick for more things about 60s Cruyff. He was the first man sent off playing for Holland, and his punishment was a 1-year ban for playing for the Dutch national side. Just for 1 year.
Jesus.
I mean, it was just about tackle as well. I mean, bloody hell. There's also some interesting geopolitics, like I'm going to give a little quote here. The ref, this was him playing in the Czech Republic. The ref was the boss and no one questioned his authority, and that is without mentioning the huge social difference between me, a young Western sportsman in the age of Beatlemania, and an East German who had to rule the field once a week for 90 minutes and then go back to keeping his trap shut in the GDR. You don't get that from Noble, do you, mate? None of that, like. He doesn't think about any of this business. Not once does he think about the economic differences between his life and the lives of the officials.
He does hate Hull, though.
But a very significant part of his life was when there was an attempted kidnapping whilst he was living in Barcelona. He was at home with his wife and his kids in their flat. Apparently footballers had apartments in the old days, didn't they? No nice houses for them. They all lived in tiny little apartments. And a guy with a gun comes in. He's tying up Johan Cruyff. His wife manages to escape. Note, I hear that she left the kids in the bedroom, but she got away. Was able to raise the alarm, and they escaped. But this went on to have a huge effect on the career of Johan, because, and this is where my little alarm bells were picking up. But he wouldn't go to the 1978 World Cup because he didn't want to leave his family alone because of the kidnapping.
Oh, he says.
What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, question marks, I think, because, you can't, it's hard to talk about this without the 1974 stuff, right?
Yeah. Start with the 1974 stuff. It's arguably the greatest ever footballing team, with the exception of 1970 Brazil, I think, right? That's the 74 Holland team is
the best
team that people talk about.
And the best team ever to win the World Cup. I think everybody has agreed there.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect description.
But so they were the best team. They beat the defending champions Brazil in the semi-finals. They got to the final and they thought they were just going to roll over the hosts, West Germany. But then there was a news story that they were frolicking in the swimming pool with naked locals from Germany, and this.
Can you imagine?
Bild, the German tabloid, published this on the eve of the final, and Johan's wife, who wasn't there, obviously was very upset about this, and Johan was a non-entity in the final, and apparently this is the reason he didn't go in 1978. And the thing about the kidnapping, he said he couldn't talk about that for years, which seems very out of character for Johan. It sounds like he would just talk about it if it was in his interest to talk about it,
Well, he says, the club didn't want him to talk about it in case it gave people ideas. That sounds like bollocks, doesn't it? All of this sounded like bollocks to me. It just seemed like rationalising.
Yeah, I think I had a similar thought there. Like, it's obviously pretty grave being kidnapped at gunpoint. But yeah, I think maybe, I'm not saying he made it up, but maybe he kind of jigged around the timelines a bit to suit his own legacy or whatever. Because the Netherlands got to the final in Argentina in 1978 with no Cruyff, who was the best player in the world at the time. So, yeah, wow, like so close twice. And you think...
Yeah, and he says, do I think we could have won it if I was there? Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Oh, mate. I mean, he's got to live with that... It's just, again, I don't want to cast judgment on someone must be incredibly traumatic. Nonetheless, they don't have to stay in the fucking flat, mate. Send them back to Holland, like. Stay at their mothers. You'll be all right. You can still go. very frustrating. That very frustrating indeed. Like, and the fact that it sounds like he can't really even be honest with himself about it.
Yeah, maybe he's kind of convinced himself.
He sort of says, "I have no regrets about this," but then he's sort of like, "I could have influenced the game." It's almost like that's a regret. You should have gone, son. You should have gone, son.
You just see him in the apartment when he's being tied up by the kidnapper. He's like, "No, you don't want to do it like that, mate."
I'm going to get out of this, not in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
Apparently the Dutch were like delighted anyway, because they were nothing. It'd be like the equivalent of maybe Ireland getting to the final. They were nobody and suddenly they're in the final. So they were they felt like they had obviously been announced on the world stage, not just as a footballing nation, but also as the kind of creators of this modern football. So suddenly they were a thing. So cool as well. Cruyff was a Puma man, and Adidas were the sponsors made the Dutch jersey, and he refused to wear it, and he ripped off one of the 3 stripes and played in 2 stripes.
Yeah, it's something, eh? You wouldn't even get away with that nowadays.
Do you see the thing he said about his wife as well? So his wife, so he says he didn't go into after he lost all of his money. He didn't go into a bank for 30 years. He also says that he never bought his own clothes. So his wife dressed him, and like he was kind of a style icon. That whole team were like, if you look in 1974, they were cool dudes, with their long hair and all the rest of it, their swashbuckling style. But yeah, it was all Danny. It was all his wife.
I'd love to know how much. I mean, people must have turned on that television. People talk about the 70 World Cup and the 74 because they were in colour and stuff. Like, you're seeing stuff you've never seen before. You've been watching, like, I don't know, I mean, from an English perspective, Preston North End clogging the ball around the park for the last 30 years of your life. And all of a sudden, there's these people in beautiful orange shirts on these beautiful green parks just sliding it around and doing little dinks and tricks. And it's like, what the fuck is this? What is it? It's like if you watch old Premier League years and you watch like Premier League years 93 and they show you the trick section and it really is like someone like doing one keepy uppy on the it's like Steve Froggatt doing a keepy uppy on the halfway line. It's like, ooh, look at that, showboating. And now it's like, ooh, look at these lads, I could never do that. Yeah, it's coming along. I mean, yes, it must have been astonishing, but which is all the more, well, it's just such a tragedy he didn't go. Such a tragedy he didn't go. Anyway, so he fell out at Barcelona after huge success, right? Well, success without winning the Champions League, but they won the league. They hadn't won the league for, I think it was 14 years before he arrived, and then they won the league immediately, like the first year that he was there. And there was some complication that meant he couldn't play for the first couple of months. I think they had lost 5 games in a row or something like that, and then they just didn't lose a game for the rest of the season. So he must have just been magic. Must have felt good, eh? Like, all right, lads, there he is.
He was the most expensive player in the world as well. The other thing is he was there during the Franco years as well, which comes up when he's naming his son. He likes to talk about tussles he's had with like kind of little jobbing bureaucrats. That's what he likes to talk about. That's what this book is mostly involved in,
Well, it's the whole son naming thing that comes up in the timeline. That's like Chekhov's son. Thank you very much. It's like Chekhov's son because it comes back later. It's like, oh, those bloody Franco people, not like me. Cool guy. I want to call my son Jordi, and I'll do what I like. And I had to name him in Amsterdam. You won't stop me, Franco. One in the eye for General Franco there.
Yeah, because Jordi is a Catalan name. Saint Jordi, George.
His time in Spain, unsurprisingly, ends fairly acrimoniously. Johnny, can you talk us through this?
Well, I think what it was actually was he wanted to retire. He's such a maniac. He said that he always knew that he would retire as a 31-year-old. That's very arbitrary, isn't it? I guess it's because 3 and 1 adds to 4.
Makes 4. And then you take that one that you used before. Yeah, that's 4.
But then he lost all his money when he invested in this pig stunt. And he had to come back and play again, but he went to America.
Just, I don't know, pig farming. I mean,
what could possibly go wrong?
He's just thinking, oh, I'm going to retire now. How am I going to enjoy my money? I want to get into something I'm interested in. That's for sure. Like, I've always been into butchering pigs. How'd you fucking get into that one? I was like, that sounds interesting. My head pricked up. Like, I mean, honestly, all right. Well, he paid the price, didn't he?
You know, Bastian Schweinsteiger. Do you know what his name means?
Pig farmer, right?
I think it's pig climber.
Well, I'm sure climber means something like razor or something, right? That's probably what it means. Pig climber. He's not climbing on pigs. Wall. I mean, how does like a family get that name? Where's your dad? Like, oh, he's off the pig farm. What's he doing? Climbing? Ah, you're a Schweinsteiger.
He goes to America. Like you say, I wasn't even. If you read this book, you wouldn't really know who he played for. He was
right. So he goes to America and he signs for the LA Aztecs. And just as a coincidence, and he says it's not why he signed for them. Rinus Michels is the coach.
But he was also the coach in Barcelona. He was the coach in the Netherlands in 1974.
He swears this is a coincidence. He's just like, I was going to sign for an American team, and guess who turned up? It's the same manager I've had twice before for all my other teams.
Three times.
And he claims it's a coincidence. He claims that. Okay, all right. I'm having that. Apparently 3 years passed. Not that you'd know, Johnny, would you? You wouldn't know that 3 years passed at the LA Aztecs, because it's just like, and then it's just, they're like, oh, the LA Aztecs, they wanted to have a more Hispanic theme. They wanted to be more Hispanic. So, best footballer in the world. Fuck off. Fucking do one. You haven't got a Spanish name. Like, you're no good. It's weird stuff, baby. Weird stuff.
Yeah, that is funny. And off he goes to the Washington.
Yeah, off he goes. That's it. That's none of that. They just like, because the American League owned the players, right? So basically, they could send you anywhere, and he had no real say in it.
Isn't it like you see? You know, he's the creator of the modern game of football, but he's also kind of like the first modern footballer, like superstar as well, isn't he? He's living beside Robert McNamara. You know,
right. Well, let's have a little talk about this. So this is the one where genuinely took my breath away. So off he goes. Is it the Washington Diplomats he plays for?
Diplomats.
McNamara, genuinely one of the biggest figures in international diplomacy in the 20th century, right?
Well, yeah, he was Secretary of State under Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, which is remarkable because like Nixon and Kennedy are like different parties. That's just
not a very eventful period of American history.
Yeah, he was there. He was there all throughout the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
just crazy stuff, right?
I mean, astonishing. And he says he's got loads of great tips, like little tips about the neighbourhood. He could tell you all the nice schools. He could enlist your kid with an IQ of 70 into the thing, and he could tell you the best shops. So yeah, he got a lot going on. It's more. What was it? I looked him up. He's more on patrol. That was one of his crimes. McNamara. He got it so people who are mentally substandard could sign up for the army. People with IQs of 55 and 60 were signing up for the army. That was one of McNamara's brainchilds.
Jeez, that's bad, isn't it?
He was bad, but he seemed nice, didn't he? on that fog of war. I mean, he did some terrible things, but at least he was quite reflective about it. Like, maybe that was bad. Anyway, so genuinely took my breath away. Right?
You don't expect that.
Mark Noble's not hanging with Kissinger, is he? Like, there's none of that. Like,
yeah, that was remarkable, and it's just like I say, it's this footballer as mega celebrity, and that you said earlier about Cruyff's ego, that appealed to him, didn't it? He was on television, kind of introducing soccer to the masses there. But yeah, he's hanging around with McNamara and one of the Kennedys. She's big in the Special Olympics, and he gets involved in charitable work, starting with kids with disability, getting them involved in sports and stuff like that. But yeah, mixing with
which is great news for the disabled kids, but bad news for us, the reader, because this guy's back. Oh, it's so boring. All this charity work. Oh, it's so boring. Oh, yeah.
But again, like the Cruyff as the first mega superstar footballer. How many of these other books have we read? Milner has a foundation. Does Mark Noble have a foundation?
They've all got a fucking foundation. There should just be a chapter, and it should just be like charity work, and it's like it should have a QR code. It's like, if you're interested, and nobody will be, like, click on that QR code. It goes to like a description of my charity work, because dear God, I don't care. Of course you fucking look at the money you make. Of course you're going to give to charity. Of course you must. If you don't, you're a monster. All right, but well done. He's built some football pitches, so hero boy.
He's built 300 in 19 different countries now. So
I think, Johnny, if I devoted my life to it, I could make 300 football pitches, even without a celebrity. But I could.
I mean, he should have done a better job, is what you're telling me.
It's, you're right. Wind your neck in, Johan.
Yeah, but I think he might just be bonkers today, you know?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, that's right. I think you're right. Anyway, so in America, he basically played no football at all, although apparently he played every week, but there's absolutely no description whatsoever. But he is a big fan of the way Americans do sport, isn't he? He's just a big fan of America, full stop, right? He is. Yeah. He likes it.
And this book is more about his philosophy on life, really, isn't it, than his life? Because he'll talk about this is what the Americans do in terms of sports management. This is what they do in terms of whatever high performance-y type stuff. He'll talk about that kind of stuff, but he won't talk about the football, because maybe the football is totally forgettable to him, you know?
And it happened 50 years before we wrote the book, right? I mean, it's difficult to remember it all, I guess. Yeah. There's probably not that many videos of many of his games from way back when.
You'd think he'd remember the odd game, though.
Like World Cups and stuff.
Well, like there's one game in America. He really is funny, isn't he? He goes back to the Netherlands and he plays 3 more years. 2 at Ajax, and then with 1 with Feyenoord, just because, you know, he's Cruyff and he wants to stick a finger in the eye of the Ajax people who are annoying him.
Yeah, that is one way, isn't it? Like, here you go, deadly rivals. Here's a fucking poke in the eye.
He's greedy as well, isn't he, Cruyff? It's quite clear in the book he's greedy.
I think you're probably right.
So the whole thing there, and how he fell out with Ajax, he came back to Ajax. Like, you know, you hear these guys, you know, mega superstars, and they're talking about like, this was the tax regime in Spain, this was the tax regime in the Netherlands. It's like, come on, dude. Like rein it in a bit. I talked about like that being a positive with Savage, and it's interesting to hear, but fucking hell, come on. So when he went back to the Netherlands, he was paid, there was a maximum amount a footballer could be paid, and he was paid that. But he came up with some scheme whereby Ajax could only pay him a certain amount a month, but they could pay an unlimited amount into a pension for him. So he came up with this thing where he had an agreement with Ajax that every gate receipts after a certain amount of people at a match, half of the gate receipts would go to him. Like, we're talking about a lot of money. And then 2 years in with Ajax, someone says, like, man, this isn't on anymore. We're going to have to change this. And he's like, okay, well, I'll see if Feyenoord will do it. And they said yes. And he went off and he was said, and the best thing about Feyenoord was their stadium was bigger.
More money for Johan. Good stuff.
Yeah, the football is not really discussed all that much anyway. But what was fun was after his playing days coming to an end, but then he became a technical director at Ajax, and he wasn't allowed to be a technical director because he was railing against over accreditation of football coaching. Kind of agree with him there, to be honest, and just over accreditation generally. But then, so he was essentially the coach of Ajax, but he had a kind of a made up title, technical director, and he missed out on the following players: Cyril Regis.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Frank Stapleton. The reason he's talking about these things is he could have got the great Frank Stapleton if Ajax weren't just so damn slow in how they did business, you know. He missed out on Regis, missed out on Stapleton, and he's like, up yours, suits, I'm off. And then he went back to Barcelona, where he was no longer a technical director. He was a full-blown coach, baby. Like, he went in 1988 to Barcelona, and they won the European Cup in 1992 in this dream team. And he talks about, there's a couple of things, actually. He would describe in a paragraph what Malcolm Gladwell would get an entire book out of. So he talks about, for Barcelona, in order for them to become the dream team, they had to practice making triangles for 10,000 hours. Okay, well, there you go. There's the entire premise of one Gladwell book. And one of the kind of Cruyffisms is your weakness is your strength. And that is another Gladwell book, that one, the David and Goliath one.
I can assure you, Johnny, I have got Gladwell written down here. Another name I've got written down here, actually, which I meant to bring up before, is Stephen Patrick Morrissey. Because this book is just like Morrissey's book. It really is. Like, Morrissey wrote an autobiography. I'm not recommending it to you, Johnny, but it's an interesting read in as much as the first half is all about the music and the Smiths and the founding and his solo career. And then the second half is just him moaning about a fucking court case with the rest of the band, like, and it's astonishing the parallels. Like, it's really quite similar, I think. Like,
okay.
Half the book is about the magic, and the other half is just axe grinding the old axe.
Yeah, well, there is, yeah, exactly. Absolutely, in terms of this book. But then, this book is such an unusual book in a way, because it is interesting, and Cruyff himself is a really compelling character, but it's a real grind in certain parts, isn't it?
I did find it a grind. I really, more so than most of the books we've read, to be honest.
It's too long. It could have been half the length. They could have stopped with just the magic, and he could have talked about the magic a bit more.
No, I could have done without the whole second half of the book. The whole second half of the book I found deeply tedious. I'm looking at my notes here, and it's peppered like the first half, and the second half, oh, dear Christ.
Yeah.
Marginal gains. It's just like, it's describing marginal gains. It's bits of contract disputes and mild disagreements with board directors. I can't read that much about board directors. Like, I'm just not that interested, especially when I don't know who they are.
He must be Cruyff turning in his grave at the way football has gone now with the suits. Because that's who run the game now.
Yeah, but fucking, he loves the American style of things. He's always talking about how he should make the stadiums better, charge him more, but they get a better experience. I think it was a bit of a dichotomy there, like, because part of it, yeah, is for Suits doing it, and he only wants football people doing it. But then he was so in love with all the American sports, where, by the way, when they win the Super Bowl, it's not the coach or the fucking players who pick up the Super Bowl, it's the owners.
Yeah.
Make your mind up, Johan.
There is something to that, yeah, you're right. His son, Jordi's playing career gets way too much attention, doesn't it?
Way too much. You can almost feel the gratitude, like, he gets, like, as Fergie bought Jordi Cruyff, which kind of vindicates everything. So see, he was a great player, because look, a great manager bought him. Whereas we all know that Jordi Cruyff was fucking shite for United, wasn't he? He was rubbish.
I have no memory.
Not shy, but he was never a first teamer, was he?
No, and I have no memory of him doing anything in particular. And I was watching United like religiously at that time, and I have no memory of him doing anything. But Cruyff says that, and this is probably bollocks, but he says that you already had a bad operation. And if there's one guy out there who knows things about surgery, it's Johan Cruyff. But he says that ruined his career.
It's a big accusation, that, isn't it? That surgeon didn't do his job properly, and that's what they're always quick to talk about, football managers, like, oh, there's some dickhead from the stand, like, what does he know about football? Well, again, Johan, wind your neck in a bit, bruv. It's a huge accusation to say some surgeon ruined his son's career. Maybe his son's career was ruined by the fact he wasn't that good at football. Yeah,
well, that's not what Johan spends a whole chapter telling us.
That's it. Very much like, a favourite child, isn't he, Jordi? Very much a favourite child.
Wonder how Jordi felt reading this book. It must have been a bit, oh, Dad, come on.
Dad, what's going to read this? Like, my son is the best footballer in the whole world, and no one can tell me differently. Dad.
Talking about ruining careers, he does think that Van Basten blames him for playing him in the game against Groningen, which he injured his ankle in, which ruined his career.
Yeah, he does that, and he openly says he shouldn't have played him. His ankle wasn't right, and he clearly thinks Van Basten was the best of all those Dutch players, right?
But he says in the book that me and Van Basten are widely agreed to be the two best Dutch players ever.
And I'm not disagreeing, but when I was a kid, like, it was Hullet. Hullet was the best player in the world.
But significantly, Hullet didn't play for Ajax.
No, he didn't, and that's probably where it all comes from.
Yeah, I think that might be part of it because he is like it's funny. He is at war with Ajax for most of the book, but he is an Ajax more than a Barcelona guy. He is an Ajax guy first and foremost, isn't he?
He literally grew up with them, though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was his life as a
His
kid.
family, like, when he was a kid, yeah.
It is a hell of a coincidence, though, right? Isn't it? That, you do grow up around a football team and a big football team, and you also happen to be one of the best footballers that ever walked on this earth. I mean, I know it's going to help, right? You're going to practice a bit, but like lots of kids must, I don't know, just
it's
hell of a thing.
It's astonishing to me that is his background. Remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because the best footballer in the world could be from anywhere, right? He could be from Mali. He could be from like China. He could be from anywhere.
Yeah, but I suppose like it was him and Michels that catapulted Ajax into the club that it became. So it's a chicken and egg thing in a way, maybe.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, as a Forest fan, we always talk about the phenomenal achievements of Cloughy, but they were a nothing team with no professional players in 1965. 8 years later, they were 3 times champions of Europe.
Yeah.
Wow. It really does. But, that Ryan Smart, we all have our own football folklore, don't we, in all our own countries. But crikey, Mikey, he's got to have a shout for the greatest ever, doesn't he? He really does. I mean, he totally transformed the game.
Like as a football career, I thought about this, and obviously Messi is probably widely agreed to be the greatest player ever now, but we don't know what his post-playing career would be like. But when you combine a life in football, this is the most influential fella ever.
That is a big shout, but I can't necessarily disagree with it. I can tell you what Messi's post-football career is going to be. It's going to be depressing as fuck, man. It's going to be absolutely centered around promoting like oil-rich nations, right? Isn't it? Of course it is.
Well, Cristiano, presumably similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just going to be a money accumulation like contest, I think, between the two of them.
Like, you can imagine Cristiano like being in like a boxing match with a panda or something like that,
30 years from now, we'll be fighting Anthony Turner's husband on TV.
He'll be in he'll show up in a few films and stuff like that, just awful stuff, I can imagine.
Yeah, he'll be at the Republican National Convention in 2070, like banging the drum for like Baron Trump. I talked about this before because I heard someone talking about the old Mount Rushmore of footballers. He's there, isn't he? Oh, he's there. How many are on? There's only 4 people on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
So you got your Pele, you got your Maradona, you got your Cruyff, and we've got Messi. One still to hang out. Was probably Messi, right?
Messi,
or Ronaldo.
Well, he was voted by the International Federation of Football Statistics. Cruyff was voted the greatest European player of the 20th century.
Were they considering Stuart Pearce in that? Oh, I don't know. Maybe not.
It was before Brexit, so I assume they were.
Yeah, so that's it. Good book or not good book? Book, for me, Johnny, not so good. But the story of the man, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, it's a funny one because it was just immediately evident from the first 5 lines that this was a different book than Noble's book, that we're dealing with a different, character. This is this is a titan of the 20th century. Move over, Robert McNamara.
Yeah, Noble's like an actor in The Bill, and this is like Humphrey Bogart or something, isn't it? Like, this is a big boy.
Yeah. I want to know more about Cruyff. I just thought he's a really compelling character. And I remember saying when we did the Maradona one that I found it astonishing that the best player could kind of be the most interesting character, but it's similar, like in different ways. Like, it's not as Cruyff is cool, but he's not cool in the way that Maradona is, and he's obviously just a cantankerous of bollocks as well,
Yeah.
But he's really, really compelling.
He doesn't. He certainly doesn't have the joie de vivre that your Maradona has. Not at all.
Okay, Al, how are we going to? What is the measure of this book? What are we going to use?
I give it 3 aborted kidnaps out of 5.
I give it 3.5 made up kidnappings.
3.5. It gets 3.5. No kidding.
Yeah, I think he's extremely compelling. But
and I know a lot more about him. I could speak more confidently now about ye olde football. I will be able to speak more confidently.
This is a man who has just an opinion on everything as well. He obviously, kids shouldn't play football in studs. If you play without studs, you'll have better balance. So don't play football in studs. He just has an opinion on every fucking minor thing ever.
Yeah, this would be better if it was a biography, wouldn't it? It would be better if someone just told the story of his career without necessarily chapters and chapters of his thoughts. I'd love to know more about how they won the European Cups. I'd love to know a bit more about the other players and how they took a team from practically nothing to the pinnacle of football in 8 years.
I did like hearing into his brain, though. His crazy brain. There was something enjoyable about that too.
There's some brain. I need less brain. A bit less brain.
And maybe an abridged version of this book.
Yeah.
They should bring out the abridged version.
So I'd recommend it. You could read it. You'll certainly learn something. If you stop reading halfway through, I don't think you'd miss out on much.
Yeah. You just stop. Stop the moment he stops managing, I think. Bang.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. At the end of it managing, you don't really need to know because it's just his opinions and it's him grinding his axe.
Yeah.
So, you can catch us on the Ademola Bookmen Pod on Instagram.
Yes.
That's where we'll be. And if you have any recommendations for books, we would love to hear them.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Johnny.
Thank you, Al.
Always a pleasure, sir. And we'll see you in 2 more weeks.
Yes, indeed.
Just a glass.